allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to our full house.
I love
you all
it.
must love it.
Thank you all for being here.
All right, approval of the agenda.
I move the board approve the agenda as presented.
Second. Nick,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes.
AJ,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Drew,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Angie.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, Mr. Ackerman, you're up. I'm assuming these are all here for you.
There are, I know tonight's going to be, exciting. We may break a record for most state champions in the house here tonight.
Nice.
This is going to be fun. But I do want to play a little bit of catch up. As you may know, we had 12 snow days in this semester, right, students?
Only 12?
Only 12 snow days. We had a recognition last month that we wanted to move to this month, and I thought I would bring Mr. Aaron Money. Aaron, come on up. Aaron made some news here recently as he was selected the Missouri Music Educators Association 2025 Outstanding Music Administrator of the Year. And I thought I would just pull a couple of remarks from what the Fine Arts Department shared with us. He's a great communicator, which I appreciate. Yes, thank you. So thank you. He helps to build unity across the district in music disciplines. Liberty Music directors can bring students to amazing performances at conferences through travel and local partnerships as a direct result of his support and leadership. Mr. Money is an innovative thinker who constantly strives to elevate music education in the community, not only for today's students, but for future students of Liberty Public Schools. The Fine Arts Office, they would like to add, he's just a whole lot of fun to work with. I can appreciate that as well. So want to give a congratulations to Mr. Aaron Money for receiving this. And here comes the run on the state champions. Here the last couple of years, we have recognized our Blue Jay wrestling programs, boys and girls, virtually. Had a chance to visit with Coach Brewer and Coach Laws over at the high schools. This year we thought we need to bring this crew in and meet them in person. And you see there the boys wrestling program, Class 4 state champions, that being for a 6th consecutive time, that accomplished on Saturday, March the 1st. I thought what we would do though, Denise, Coach Laws, would you bring up your Blue Jay lady wrestlers, because it's ladies first here as part of honoring excellence, as they come up. We have 3 Blue Jay ladies with us, and I'm going to introduce them one by one. Lily Breeden, would you raise your hand? This is
Couldn't do it.
yeah, I can kind of relate to this somewhat. Lily, she's a junior at Liberty High School. She finished her junior campaign with a 49-0 record, which now puts her at 134-1 for her career as a Blue Jay, and now a 2-time Missouri State champion, 3-time medalist for LHS. She's currently ranked number 4 in the country, according to USA Wrestling. This season, Lily did not have an offensive point scored on her throughout the entire season. I think that's pretty good. Lily, congratulations. Sandy, would you raise your hand for our audience? Sandy is a junior at Liberty High, finished her junior campaign with a 47-2 record, giving her a career record of 124-7 as a J, and similar to her sister, is now a 2-time Missouri State champion, along with being a 3-time state finalist. Sandy is currently ranked number 12 in the country, according to USA Wrestling. Sandy Breeden, congratulations. And Alexis Stinson, raise your hand. Alexis is a junior at Liberty High School. You have a pretty good junior class at Liberty High. She finished her junior year with a record of 44-2, bringing her career record to 110-12. She was previously a two-time state qualifier before capping off her junior season with a pinfall in the state final. She currently is ranked number 14 in the country according to USA Wrestling. Alexis Stinson, congratulations. Since I have Coach Laws here, do want to give a shout out to the entire team at Liberty High, the ladies with a second place team finish, which was the highest in school history, and they have now finished all 3 years with a state trophy, meaning a top 4 finish at state. Take a bow, Jay. Congratulations. All right, Coach Brewer, would you bring the Blue Jay boys forward? Again, we mentioned these guys winning their 6th consecutive Class 4 state champion. A few highlights as well as they come forward. Conference champions, district champions. They had 13 state qualifiers, 8 state medalists, 6 state finalists, ranked number 1 in the state overall, national ranking as high as 28. You intimidate me a little bit with that stone cold look on your face, about to put me in a headlock. Let's go ahead and keep things going then. Devin Harrison, would you raise your hand? This is Devin. Devin is a senior, career record 144-28, 4-time state finalist, along with his state championship, Fargo All-American, Ironman placer, 4-time academic All-State. Good job, Devin Harrison. How about Peyton Westfall? Peyton is not here. I do want to, Coach, I'll give this award, if you can give that to Peyton. Peyton, career record 114-17, 4-time state placer, 2-time state champ, 3-time Fargo All-American, 3-time academic All-State. Awesome job. Let's give Peyton Westfall a round of applause. Trenton Bindle. Trenton over here. Trenton, a career record of 105-35, 3-time state placer, and of course with the state championship, 2-time Donnybrook placer, 2-time academic All-State Trenton Bindle. And finally, Roman Stewart. Would you raise your hand? Sophomore. Roman has a career record of 70-13. 2-time state placer and a state champion U15 placer as well, Roman Stewart. Congratulations. Great job. So those are your Blue Jay state champions, and I have a team state certificate for Coach Brewer. Thanks for being here. All right. Moving along. I did want to, of course, we have some space constraints here in the boardroom. I had a chance to go over to the Learning Stairs last week and connect with the Liberty High School Sapphires, who were recently crowned the Class 6A state champions. And the Sapphires were so kind to meet us there. We had a chance to interview them. They introduced themselves to us, so if we could take a look at that brief video. Denise.
25 Missouri State Champions, Liberty Sapphires, and I'm Sydney Rogers, the senior captain.
I'm Zoe Mead, a junior captain. I'm Savina Bonadonna, a junior captain.
I'm Quinn Roach, a junior. I'm Riley Huffman, a junior.
I'm Blaine Willis, and I'm a sophomore.
I'm Amelia Hunt, a sophomore.
I'm Madison Lee, and I'm a sophomore.
I'm Samantha Martin, a sophomore.
I'm Ashlyn Kane, and I'm a freshman.
I'm Estella Bratcher, and I'm a freshman.
I'm Kendall Schubert, and I'm a freshman, and Ava Balicki, sophomore.
So there are your Sapphires. If you didn't, if you made note, not many seniors on that team, so we may be recognizing them more and more in the coming years. But did want to make mention that they were named the 2025 Division VI Missouri State Champions in St. Louis on Saturday, February 22nd. Coaching staff is incredibly proud of this young team for their athleticism, grit, and artistry. With an average age of only 15 years old, these dancers are student athletes who truly understand the importance of hard work and team commitment. The team earned first place in Division VI Lyrical Jazz, first place in Division VI Pom, and first place in Division VI State Champions. The team also finished the year with a team GPA of 3.865 and a team weighted GPA of 3.901. Congratulations to the Liberty Sapphire Dance Team. Parker, come on forward. Parker Gavina. How about that? Are you all from Liberty High School? Supporting the Eagles. Very good. I love that. So this is Parker. Parker's a freshman on the Liberty North dance team and has had a phenomenal season. He competed with a solo this year and placed first in the Kansas City Classic Regionals as well as Lee Summit North Regionals. Then moved on to win a state championship with the solo. He also competed at nationals with the solo and placed 5th in the nation with it after advancing through a preliminary and semifinal round. North is so proud of him and all of the accomplishments this season. Parker Gavina. Whew, told you a lot of state champions to present here tonight. We do have one final recognition, though, as tonight it is Board Appreciation Night. Of course, Board Appreciation Month celebrated all across the state of Missouri, and as I do each year, just wanted to read a brief press release. Missourians benefit every day from the dedicated energies and countless hours devoted by a group of more than 3,600 men and women from communities across the state. These public servants are elected by local constituents and do not receive compensation for their tireless efforts. They are the local school board members of Missouri. During the month of March, communities across the state will honor the dedicated service of their local boards of education during School Board Recognition Month. The goal is to build awareness and understanding of the important function an elected Board of Education plays in communities and schools. All Missouri citizens are asked to recognize the important contributions of these men and women and focus attention on the vital role these public officials play in the education of Missouri's children. I know you probably received some tokens of appreciation from our schools. They were so kind to come by over the last week or so. Hope you enjoy those. I know the ECC is they submitted a video that we're going to email to each of you coming up if you've not received that already. And I also, Denise, wanted to share with you that we're going to be recognizing each of you on our social media platforms over the next week or so with some get-to-know information and reason why each of you serve. So, and then finally, we're going to do something a little bit different this year. As we had so many state champions with us tonight, you're going to be presented your official Board Appreciation Certificate by us, LPS State Champ, as we've distributed to them out in the audience. So students, make sure you bring your the right certificate with you as you present those to our board members. So let's start over here. Introduce Mr. Drew Marriott. Yeah. Mr. Dan Currents. Miss Angie Reed. Miss Karen Rogers. Mr. A.J. Bird. Miss Jen Bauer. And Mr. Nick Bartlow. So congratulations to each of you. I cannot promise we'll ever be able to do this again with 8 state champions in attendance with us here this evening. Before I wrap up, I do want to thank our coaches for being here. I want to thank Coach McDormand, Athletic Director at Liberty North, Coach Cunningham, and her team at North as well. What a great night of celebrations here, and have a great meeting.
One thing before we give you further directions is we would like to stand and give all our state champions a standing ovation because that is a tremendous. So what we typically do, I'm not even going to bother to say, is come out and talk to you and greet you and congratulate you, and we will do that until 7:30 because there's 1 or 2 of you out there. And so please don't leave before we get that opportunity to do that. I have 4 cards for public comment. If anyone else wishes to fill out a card, they are outside the back door. And then submit it to any board member or Denise Aldrich, who's our board secretary. So, with that said, we've got 11 minutes. anybody have any additional cards? I have 4. Is that it? All right. So for those addressing the board, speakers may address any subject concerning Liberty Public Schools and/or education. Board members will not engage in debates or discussions with those speaking other than to seek clarification of their comments. Speakers will address the board from the podium, are asked to keep remarks concise and to the point, and will not repeat what someone before has said. A person or persons may speak only once at the meeting. If several patrons wish to speak on the same topic, the board president may restrict the input to 1 or 2 spokespersons. Each speaker shall be limited to 3 minutes. Profane language or comments that constitute a threat to the safety of others is prohibited. Spontaneous comments from the audience will not be tolerated and may close public comment. In the event board members agree the normal flow of business is being unnecessarily delayed, they may, by majority vote, waive or end public comment. Concerns brought forward during public comment may be addressed by the superintendent or appropriate staff members, usually within a week. So the first card I have is Olivia Lindsay.
Good evening, board. How are you doing?
Good evening.
Good. My name is Olivia Lindsay. I'm a Liberty High School graduate from the class of 2023. I'm a proud Blue Jay. I was a 4-year varsity letter holder on the speech and debate team. I'm currently a junior at the University of Kansas. I'm a legal education accelerated degree scholar, an accolade I hold without, that I would not be able to hold without my speech and debate coach. I'm today speaking on behalf of LHS alumni about this debate coach. This educator is an excellent debate teacher. I myself know that the improvements and accolades I made and earned under his coaching would have not happened without his expertise. I became a 5-time national champion, a district student of the year, and won numerous district and conference champions in just 2 years under his leadership. However, the greatest lesson that the Liberty Speech and Debate coach taught me was the belief in myself, a belief that I carry far beyond my high school career. This coach went far beyond the call of duty of an average educator. In collaboration with my mother, while I was living in a toxic household, he consistently worked to make sure that I was taken care of. Snacks were in cabinets for students that needed it. No questions asked. Individual check-ins with students were offered each week about our grades and our home and personal life. Flexibilities and course expectations were offered for students with different needs so that we could meet the expectations that Liberty had for us. He offered advice about when I was overwhelmed, tutored myself and other students in classes well beyond debate, including physics, facts, and calculus. And the support I received from the LHS debate coach was nothing but consistent, kind, and impactful. He made it easier to show up and work hard and imagine a future for myself when I thought it was impossible. I can confidently say that this educator is skilled in seeing the potential in every single student, even when they cannot see it themselves. I know this because I saw it firsthand. He is persistent in his efforts to remind every student that they matter, that they value, and they are enough. And I can confidently say that without this teacher, I would not have made it through my senior year, much less graduated high school. To remove such a power from Liberty High School is antithetical to what this board claims to support. It's antithetical to what the Liberty High School holds itself to be. So today I ask you as an alumni and a proud Blue Jay that you take action to promote the words that this board holds true. Thank you.
Kaylin King.
Hello, good evening, and I hope you all have had a wonderful day. I'm here to speak on something a little different. I would like to tell you what speech and debate is. For myself and many others, speech and debate is an event that forces you to fail. It forces you to face your greatest fears, and it forces you to commit your passion and your livelihood to something that very well may not end up well. It forces you to communicate with individuals in different ways and in different contexts. And in an event that is set up to make you fail, it is so of utmost importance to preserve the coaching staff and to preserve the integrity of the team as a whole. Liberty High School has been fortunate enough to hit the jackpot with a debate coach, not once, but twice now. My debate coach for the last 4 years has encouraged us to fail in ways that has made myself and each and every individual on this team a better person. And because of that, we are part of an event whose taught skill is that of storytelling. We are here to communicate to the world and ultimately improve the world itself. Our stories are important enough to write them down and bring them to you here today. And because we're a part of an event who is here to tell stories, I bring to you the stories of over 20 speech and debate current members, ranging freshman to senior, but also the stories of alumni and parents who took their time to write down their stories for you. We've brought physical copies, and we will also be sending out a digital version via PDF and email to you by the end of the night. I urge you and implore you, read our stories. They are important. They are important enough to write down, and they are important enough to spur change. So please, I beg of you, read and understand, seek to explore, and take a step in our shoes and learn what it is to cause such massive disruptions in the ways of our lives, our individuals, our relationships, and our home. Thank you.
Carolyn Shemwell.
Good evening. First of all, I just want to shout out you all because we do appreciate you and everything with this March Appreciation Month. With that, today many of you know me as Caroline Shimwell, Liberty High School Student Body President. This is a position I have wanted for the past 6 years of my life. However, the recent decision to remove the LHS debate coach has made me question the values and beliefs of our district and whether they continue to align with my own. I am still president, which means I still have a duty to represent the voices of the student body, but it has made me question whether I want to represent this district. Nonetheless, I will share the voices of those students. I am not here to reprimand you or to spew angry remarks, but whether to ask you to consider the implications this decision will have on every single student and staff member. Fortunately, this coach's impact on LHS has been vast. Unfortunately, the removal of this person will have a negative impact of equal magnitude. Every decision this coach made was done with due diligence on what was best for every person on our team, not just one. I implore that you all use the same diligence when it comes to this decision. An hour ago, I was at my grandfather's funeral. Instead of staying with my family tonight, I elected to be here because this debate team is also my family. With the guidance of this coach, this debate team has been made a safe home for many students. I ask that you do not disrupt this safety. I ask that you do your job as a school board to speak up for students and look out for their well-being. I ask that you take the time to truly hear and understand the full story and impact regarding your decision today. I ask that you look out for all of us, and I ask that you do not remove our home. Thank you.
And last but not least, Orion Middleton.
Good evening. Thank you all for being here. Hello, my name is Orion Middleton, and I have been a speech and debate student for 5 years, and the current Liberty High School debate coach has been my coach for 4 of those 5 years. Additionally, the current Liberty High School debate coach has been one of the most influential people in my high school career. Believe it or not, my first email to him was explaining why I had missed the first 3 weeks of his class. Since then, he's only grown as one of my favorite teachers. He has been consistently there throughout every event during my high school career. He is the most understanding teacher in this building, and #1 reason why I'm still in debate today. He always knows when to pester me about a debate case and when to back off if I'm not in a good mental space. He knows his students and he values them. I also struggle with change. This coach learned this, and so he changed the way he tried to get me to branch out. Every year, it seems, he waits until the new year settles in and slowly begins pestering me into doing a new event. My freshman year was extemporaneous speaking. My sophomore year, it was Congress debate. This year, it was trying out policy debate. Each time, he coached me through it and helped me prepare for the event, sourcing optimism and encouragement. He has the work ethic of no other and has the patience of a saint. At a tournament a couple weeks ago, for example, my debate partner got really sick and panicky before round started. He coached her through it, gently encouraging her to get to round 1, and we did. We mustered up the courage to go to round 1, and we gave it our all until we had to forfeit 10 minutes in. But his insane work ethic didn't end there. He recruited a speech kid who has never done a lick of debate in her life and was thrown into my partner last minute because my original partner could not keep going. We did well enough to not only survive, but thrive in the next 3 rounds. She and I had an amazing time debating, and it can be 100% attributed to the work he put into the predicament and rebuilding our confidence. I wholeheartedly believe this type of teacher-student connection and perseverance cannot be recreated with anyone else. The Liberty High School debate coach has built strong bridges of friendships with his students. I can't speak for others, but to me this coach is more than a teacher. He's a role model, an inspiration, and a mentor. I don't believe that I can recreate this level of trust and type of connection with a new debate coach, and this could entirely determine if I take the class next year. I understand that one student's personal experience does not tell the entire story, so I'd like to share the achievements of our team. A couple of weeks ago, our team sent 7 debate teams to the Michigan State Qualifier Tournament and qualified all 7. We set a school record from that, not having first not qualified that many before in school history. Second, qualifying 100% of our teams we sent. And third, qualifying novices who has been a team for 2 weeks. Additionally, we qualified students in 10 events for individual speech events. Most recently, we attended the national tournament qualifiers and successfully qualified 8 people to the national tournament. 2 LD debaters, 1 policy team who were district champions as well, someone in extemporaneous speaking, and 3 in individual events. Additionally, we won debate team sweepstakes. We attended 16 tournaments this year, and the Liberty High School debate coach has been at the center of our success for every single one. Merit can be granted for individual hard work, but someone has to plant the seeds of success. However, you cannot plant the seeds if the bridges of the fields are burned. Thank you.
Thank you all very much for your comments. You are welcome to remain, or you are welcome to depart. It's your call. These cards will be given to a staff member, and you will hear from someone within a time period. So thank you again. We appreciate your comments.
Miss Reed, would you like the physical letters, or would you all just like a digital version?
You made the copies, so
I'm a physical. I like paper.
Will give us all paper. I'm just going to make that decision.
Yeah. Here is 1 copy of every letter for you to distribute as you please.
Okay.
Thank you very much for hearing us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking your time.
Thank you for being
Thank you guys for listening. Have a wonderful night. And happy Board Appreciation Month.
Yes, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, on to consent agenda. Our adopted rules of parliamentary procedure, Robert's rules, provide for a consent agenda listing several items for approval of the board by a single motion. Documentation concerning these items has been provided to all board members and the public in advance to assure an extensive and thorough review. Items may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any board member.
I move the board approve consent agenda items 3.1 through 3.6.
Second.
Nick,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes.
AJ,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Drew,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Angie,
Yes.
motion carries.
All right. We now have reports from the administration.
Yeah, good evening. The first one, under item 4.1, is our Innovation and Learning Report, and we'll welcome Dr. Julie Moore to the podium.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello. We are in the midst of parent-teacher conferences this week, as I'm sure you all know. Had the opportunity to make it around last night and then again today, and actually was able to attend my own child's last elementary conference, and it was pretty neat to see his last conference at elementary as a 5th grader, talking about the graduate profile. He had a portfolio, he shared videos, podcasts, and all kinds of examples of how he has demonstrated adaptability, empathy, problem solving, critical thinking. He talked about chores that he does at home. I'm not sure about that part because I haven't seen that yet. However, it was really inspiring, and it's not only at Shoal Creek, it's obviously across all the elementaries that they've been doing that, and so it's really great to see, and so we hope to really kind of expand that next year into more schools. Last week, we also were able to celebrate some middle-level entrepreneurs between South Valley and Heritage, and using some of our grant money from the Kauffman Foundation, we awarded those students grant funds so that they could continue their business ventures, and asked them to consider being at Hy-Vee on April 5th and 6th, as hopefully you've all seen that we're going to do another event with them. They've been so gracious to allow our students to come back, so that will be open for students in grades 6 through 12. Also last week we had the ACT and pre-ACT, so 9th and 10th graders took the pre-ACT, and we had over 800 juniors take the ACT online, which caused, there was a little bit of an outage nationwide, but we got it done. Both buildings did a remarkable job of just kind of managing all of that. We also, for the first time, we've always had some students who've done the work keys, but we had 62 students who took the work keys, which is a pretty, it's pretty time consuming, and actually we'd already gotten some of the scores back, and our highest scoring student was one from Liberty Academy, so we're really excited to celebrate that student. Also wanted to share that recently we took part in the Designing the Future of Public Education. It sounds similar to Carnegie, but this is something different. I think I spoke to it previously. A team of us went to Texas as one of 20 school districts who were considered innovative and invited to showcase the things that are going on in the school district and then learn from the district we were in. So we were able to share. Dr. Camp and I did a presentation on Liberty Public Schools. Dr. Schmitz, Tara Bell, and April Fleming also came with us, and it was a great learning experience for all of us. And then finally wanted to share that in our board report there are several celebrations from early college, having more students with an associate degree, to fine arts that we're really proud of. So hopefully you can take a look at that if you haven't already. That's all I have tonight.
Questions of Dr. Moore this evening? Thank you, Dr. Moore.
Okay, thank you.
4.2 then, our next administrative report is Student Equity and Access with Dr. Andrea Dixon-Seahorn.
Good evening.
Hello.
Just have a few things to share from each of the departments that are represented in our report. On behalf of Student Services, we're pleased to announce that as of today's date, we have 240 kindergartners that are fully registered for next year. That does not yet include the 235, give or take, ECC students who are presently there that will eventually roll over once their families just get them enrolled. So we are on the move with enrollment numbers since kindergarten enrollment opened on February the 1st. Also wanted to share on behalf of special programs that this is that time of the year where we submit the renewal application to the Children's Services Fund. And so we did meet that deadline for getting that application submitted. We do have a team that will be presenting to their board and just kind of sharing our programming features and just share on our grant outcomes. And then we should hear back from them before the end of the year to know the allocations that we'll receive for next school year. So very excited about that. I'm excited about this next piece here, and that is we're so proud to recognize Dr. Rob Fisher, Manor Hills counselor, and our district counseling coordinator for being named both Greater Kansas City Elementary Counselor of the Year and Director of the Year by the Greater Kansas City School Counselor Association. And so that is a very, very, very significant achievement, both of those for him, and I was able to be at the school along with other team members, colleagues, to celebrate that announcement for him. His family was also there as well, including the family dog. So that was a very nice time. With respect to special services, just wanted to thank those of you that were able to be a part, of course, the board tours that happened today to the different sites, with Liberty High School being one of them, and they were also hosting an open house for the ESC and BEST programs. I got a chance to roll through there later this evening, but it was just so nice to see the quiet sensory room, the active sensory room, and the other learning spaces to support students in the domains of being social, emotional, behavioral, and academic support for our learners to ensure their success. And there are some other save the dates that I shared last month, but wanted to also just fold them into this month's report to just keep them top of mind for you regarding the syllabi literacy, the English Language Development Department Spring Ice Cream Social, and then the upcoming Northland Job Olympics. So those are the highlights that I thought I would share this evening.
With the equity quadrant that's going, it formally ends this year, am I right? The structure that we currently have in place?
Yes, the structure that we have currently working with our PD partner, yes, that will end this year. Our initial design of that was for 3 years. Yes. However, the conversations we've been having is just about sustainability and how we take it and make it our own moving forward without having to have, say, a consultant work with us. So we will just embed the work into everyday teaching and leadership practices.
You have any idea of what it might look like, or still working on that?
I'll be able to give you more details about what it will look like for next year, because as I've been attending the cadres, I've been personally taking notes about what schools are saying they want to do, finish out this year, and things they want to do into the next year. And so I can share that more formally a little bit later,
Right.
if that's okay with you.
Absolutely. We just know how important inclusion and belonging is.
Yes, sir, I know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congrats to the SPED department at the high school for having a beautiful, amazing new space and being so blown away they are by that space. It's amazing.
Yes, it is.
As a special education teacher, I would almost go back to teaching for that space, but I'm not. And
ma'am.
please give my congratulations to Jennifer Henderson for her presentation
Yes.
at MOCASE. It is really nice to see that is her presentation on the parent and family playbook is of interest outside of our district. It's nice to see those
Yes.
things spreading.
Yes, yes. People are very interested in that family engagement piece, particularly for our families
It's so
of learners with IEPs. Yes.
Yeah. So kudos to them. And
I will
I'm sure
pass
they're
that
gonna
on.
love that space.
Thank you.
Other questions of Dr. Dixon Seaborn?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is 4.3, our finance report from Ms. Cindy Sullivan.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I have one donation to recognize this evening, a monetary donation of $2,500 from the Brody and Amy Prashon Family Charitable Gift Fund to the Liberty High School men's tennis team. We thank them for their generosity on behalf of Liberty High School. A couple of things in addition to the report that was uploaded for you tonight I would like to hit upon. The first being House Bill 14, which was a supplemental budget appropriation, was signed by the governor yesterday, so that pertains to this current year. The state was not generating enough revenue that we were going to get our total foundation formula allocation and monies. So with the passage of and the signing of that bill, we will now be assured that we should get the fully funded foundation formula amount that is due to the district. It also provides additional high needs funding to fully fund that. We were short the federal allocation on that, so they will now be able to pass that through to us, which will be somewhere between an additional $250,000 and $300,000. So we're very happy that that was signed yesterday. An update on Senate Bill 190, which is the senior tax credit freeze for Liberty. As of yesterday afternoon, there were approximately 14,900 applications submitted to the county out of 33,000 parcels that were eligible for the credit. And that application window does close on March 31st, so they're getting close to the end there. And a little less than half of eligible parcels have been submitted for the credit. Collection rates, we are a bit higher than last year. We're now at almost 98%, 98.5%, where this time last year we were right at 98%. So that's good. We still have 2 more collection periods that typically bring in a significant deposit. So we're happy that we are having that success this year. And finally, the Audit and Finance Committee met last night in person. We discussed the financial statements. We also talked about bond projects, the FY26 budget process, which I will share the beginnings of that with you a little later. And then we also spent some good amount of time on the legislative activities, so they're very aware of what's going on and had good questions about that. They did not have anything to pass along to you, and were a good group to talk with last night. That's what I have for you tonight.
Questions of Cindy? We'll hear from her again later on in the agenda.
We'll save our questions here, right?
Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Sullivan. Next then is our operations report with Mr. Steve Anderson.
Good evening. Couple items I'd like to highlight from the report. First, our Director of Health Services, Kathy Ellemeyer, went to the annual Level Up Kids event, formerly known as Miles for Smiles. We've been partners with them back to the mid-aughts, as I understand. And she was honored, she was not expecting this, but being this is her last year with retirement, she was honored with the Smile Maker of the Year award. And she was very pleased and surprised, and so again, they honored her partnership over all these years, which has been invaluable to the district of providing oral hygiene care for thousands of students that have kind of come through LPS. Also want to recognize Trey Kotzer with our technology department director in the work he's been doing on the side. It's noted in here with his work with CISA, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, I think that's right. Just working hand in hand with them on some of the planning efforts and assistance that they can provide in that capacity, but also identifying some areas of vulnerability. And so just, it's something that's very important to what Trey and his team does. A lot of it is unrecognized or maybe unnoted, but it is it is his highest priority, and I know they spend a lot of time on that, so I did want to recognize him for that. And also wanted to call out Transportation Department. They had their annual safety inspections conducted by the State Highway Patrol. 96.5% on that first run through for testing, which is very good. All that cleared out the second run, so we're at 100% at the second run. And really wanted to not only recognize Mr. Jones, the director, but his shop maintenance manager, Kevin Downing. He's been with us for quite a while. That's their kind of go time, and just appreciate him and their team kind of pulling together and getting the fleet ready to roll. Real quick update on some of the bond projects for those who were able to tour with us earlier today. The next main kind of threshold here is we have several projects wrapping up here kind of end of May, so not too far off. That's both South Valley Discovery, Liberty Academy, and
Distribution Center.
Distribution Center, thank you.
It's been a long afternoon.
I was thinking school. Yeah, no, but all those projects are tracking very well. And then I'll be updating later, presenting on the Liberty Middle School bid opening, and we'll kind of hit on that a little bit as well. But with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
I don't have any. Do you have a question?
Yeah, Steve, and I'm just not aware of it. I know I'm going back to when I was in school, requirement to take certain vaccines. What is our policy?
We follow very strictly state and health department kind of guidance on that. And then you have to have your vaccinations in order. I think there are opportunities to be excused from that, but they're very strict and specific and set at the state and national level.
Thank you.
Those exemptions are included within our board policy as far as how to go about that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Other questions of Mr. Anderson?
I didn't have a question. I was just going to shout out, I know I've mentioned this before, but when we think public sector and bureaucracy, like there's sometimes a perception that there's maybe not as much efficiency. And what I see in the report that was provided here was efforts by our managerial team in facilities and grounds in the maintenance area to do quality control inspections to make sure they're making sure they're doing their work well. So instituting a process to regularly check that and make sure that things are going right so that we can fix it if it's not. I saw that in the grounds that there's a survey in process to communicate with our community about athletic fields and the usage of those, so an effort to gather information and better understand how our resources are utilized. I saw the purchasing department working to capture, here's what we do, we know what we do, but if somebody were to leave tomorrow, do we have a way of capturing how things work in this department and putting that down to capture it so that we have that efficiency there. And so those are very unglamorous things that don't necessarily generate the same fun, but they are important in making sure the district runs well, that our buildings are safe, that, you know, and I think those things are all very important. And then the one other thing I wanted to shout out was that also your custodian, who is wonderful at Lillian Schumacher Elementary. If everybody goes and listens to, there's a new podcast at Lillian Schumacher Elementary called From Brainstorm to Broadcast, and they're in their latest episode. The fifth graders interviewed custodian and chess extraordinaire Mark Kolosek for the podcast, and it is the cutest. It is just amazing. And so these people are doing a lot of important work, and they're also building relationships with our kids. So I just,
Thank you for that, yeah. And we do find it all very glamorous, by the way.
I'm glad you did.
All right, thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next, then, our Human Resources Report with Dr. Sarah Marriott.
Good evening. I will start by sharing that the length of my report is not reflective of the amount of work we've been doing. The report is brief. As regarding recruitment, I wanted to share with you that today we have 21 certificated openings for the 25-26 school year, which is an exceptional fill rate. We have 6 elementary, 6 fine art, 5 special education, 3 secondary, and 1 counselor position open. But we have additional offers out to some of those positions. And so tomorrow at this time, hopefully that number will be even lower. So we're really proud of our team and the work that they've been doing, as well as all the other teams involved to secure those teachers for the 25-26 school year. And then I also need to share that as of March 6th, we have 248 new classified employees with our LPS team since July 1st. And we currently only have 20 vacancies, and we have several upcoming events and recruiting fairs scheduled. So that number is, again, something that we're really proud of and continue to work towards lowering. Team Liberty met on Tuesday, March 11th. The team engaged in those initial discussions regarding salary recommendations for fiscal year 26. They will reconvene on April the 3rd, and then if needed, another meeting on April the 10th. And then ADSOL, which is our administrative team for benefits and wellness, will meet this Thursday. And then the last item I just want to share with you is that earlier this year we launched the RFP process for employee insurance brokerage services. We do that every 5 years. We interviewed 5 companies for that who submitted proposals, and we secured legal counsel with Brian Johnston to assist our team with that process, and a contract will be presented to the board at our April board meeting. I'll take any questions that you have.
Thank you for organizing the student-teacher breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
It is one of the most fun events I've had.
Well, I can't take credit for any of that, and that goes to Dr. Copeland and Ann Bell for their work on organizing that and making all of the arrangements to have a successful event. So I think
Pass that along to them.
I certainly will.
I thought it was a great networking event.
It's very fun, yes.
Anything else for Dr. Marriott?
Thanks for the
All right,
Thank
you.
Thank you. The last item then under the administration reports, just real briefly, a couple highlights to share. Points to note, the legislative session certainly is well underway. We're currently this week in the legislative spring break, as they like to call it. So a little bit of a pause to the work happening in the House and the Senate. No shortage of activity. Make note of a couple of things. In terms of open enrollment, that passed the House just last week as far as House Bill 711. And so that goes on to the Senate for deliberation. We'll continue to watch that very closely. Appreciate several of our board members, I believe Ms. Rogers, Mr. Byrd, Ms. Bauer, for taking the time to go to Jefferson City last week. I was there the week before. And I know they shared they had an opportunity to connect with several legislators and felt like they had good conversations. So another item to note, we'll speak about this a little bit later on in the agenda, was just the traction around proposed forgiveness tied to inclement weather as it relates to this calendar year, 24-25, and I believe that was House Bill 607, if I remember correctly. So a lot of bills that we're watching, but those were the 2 that I wanted to make note of. Would also just reiterate, appreciate MSBA for providing legislative updates weekly as far as happenings in the Capitol, along with other education associations that we tune into, whether they're teacher groups, superintendent groups, business official groups. I know that's a busy time in the spring as far as tracking all the happenings going on in Jefferson City and the implications that it may have on us. As things continue during this session, whether it's conversations, phone calls, emails, or more formally submitting fiscal notes. I appreciate Ms. Sullivan for helping do that from time to time as we look at bills and have the opportunity to provide a fiscal impact note to the legislature. We'll look forward to doing that. In addition to that, we just wrapped up our 23rd State of the District meetings. Appreciate Dallas Ackerman for helping schedule that, and all of our building principals and our department heads for hosting really cabinet to be able to not just provide a quick 25-minute video as far as update regarding the district, but then some additional highlights as well as opportunity to provide feedback, questions, and opportunity to just connect across all of our campuses. Some things that we highlighted over the course of those meetings were really a lot of the transition in leadership that's happening both at the local level, at the state level, and the federal level. Locally, we know with the close of the candidate filing window, we don't have to have an election in April because Karen and Dan have signed up again and no others signed up. So come April, we will swear them back in. We'll work through reorganization and then set the stage for the remainder of this year as far as that board structure, but then also getting ready for the 25-26 year. At the state level, the conversation was in and around the change in the governor's position from Mike Parsons over to Mike Kehoe and what that might entail for us and some of the early indicators, things that he included in his State of the State address, and then certainly all of the activity going on in the first 100 days of the new administration in Washington, D.C. So no shortage of activity that we're tracking both at the local, the state, as well as the federal level. The other thing I would point to, I appreciate everyone's participation in many of our spring recognitions, whether it was Support Staff of the Year, Teacher of the Year, other events, whether they're student recognitions, walkthroughs that will culminate later this spring with celebrating our retirees as well as our graduates from both Liberty High School and Liberty North High School. Last thing that I would mention, we're looking forward to continuing our partnership with Real World Learning and the Kauffman Foundation. Later in the month of April, several of our team will be attending the Real World Learning Summit, which is an effort really to just coalesce around the new areas identified in the Real World Learning Strategic Plan as we move forward, just to continue to work toward that goal in 2030 of reaching 100% of our Kansas City area students obtaining a market value asset. As a district, we're over 80%, is that right, Dr. Moore? And well on our way toward meeting that goal, but we still have work to do. So we look forward to continuing those conversations. With that, would entertain any questions that you all may have of us.
You've been very busy.
Lots going on, yeah. And lastly, more snow on the way tomorrow evening is what
Okay.
Thank you.
I did have to throw that out there.
Thank you.
That's okay. Dallas already threw it out.
Is it snow if it melts when it's
Is it snow?
rain? It's just rain.
Temperature
White
drop
rain.
is bad enough. We don't need to get snow today. All right. And no questions for the superintendent?
Thank you.
We don't need another snow day. Unfinished business, board policy update.
You'll recall from last month, we had some board policies that were presented for first read. We're bringing those to you this evening for your consideration and action. That includes BBBB-2, school board ballot issues, and then BDC, closed meeting records and votes. We present those to you for your consideration.
I move the board approve policy BBBB-2 and BDC.
Second.
Nick,
Yes.
Jen.
Yes.
AJ,
Yes.
Dan.
Yes.
Drew,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Angie,
Yes.
motion carries.
All right. New business.
Under new business, the first item, 6.1, is an amendment or revision to the 2024-2025 academic calendar. Certainly appreciate everyone's patience this winter as we've navigated more than normal inclement weather. Also want to thank all of our operations teams and those who are behind the scenes, oftentimes at 4 o'clock in the morning, shoveling snow or blading parking lots or putting treatment down. Just getting ready for school in the event that we're able to attend school. And looking ahead, a couple numbers that I want to mention to you are 2, 6, 2, and 2. You may recall that when we set the calendar for the 24-25 school year, we set a calendar of 173 student contact days, with the understanding that those first 2 days would be traditional snow days. That's where that 2 comes into play. The 6 are the number of days that we are permitted to submit to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education as alternative methods of instruction days, where we receive 100% attendance for virtual learning days. The following 2, because you've already used those 6 AMI days, we just have as traditional virtual learning days that are not submitted to DESE for attendance. And then the final 2 were the last 2 days that we received. So the first 2 and the last 2 are the ones that we are focused in on, because what that ends up doing is it reduces those from our overall, the first 2 and the last 4 are the ones that reduce our calendar below 169 days. So last year, you may recall that the legislature put a little bit of a carrot out there for districts to have a calendar in excess of 169 days. In the event that they do that, they would receive, I believe, 1% of funding in year 1, which is approximately $600,000 to the district, and then that would grow to 2% in years to come. And so as you take that 173-day calendar and you take off the first 2 traditional snow days, and then you take those 6 days of 100% attendance, those are accounted for. And then you start looking at those subsequent days, that dropped us below 169. And so all that said, we have 2 days that need to be made up. Initially, when we had 1 day, we were looking at the possibility of this Friday. We were also looking at the possibility of April 18th. And then we had the next snow day. And so right now we're looking at those 2 makeup days, and the proposal you have in front of you this evening does a couple things. It takes May 21st, and keeps that as a full day rather than an early release Wednesday. And then it takes Friday the 23rd, makes that a full day. And then it has the first makeup day as a full day on Tuesday, May 27th, and then the second makeup day on Wednesday, May 28th, with that day being a 3-hour early release. I say all that to say, as we continue to walk through the legislative session, we'll certainly watch if the state legislature provides any forgiveness as it relates to that. The second document you have is in and around the EPIC calendar, and you'll notice just a minor change there. As you go to the month of May, you have obviously that May 28th reflects the 3-hour early release, because that is the district's last day, albeit we know that EPIC continues into the month of June with their last day, their tentative last day of school being that June 6th. So it would provide those 2 revisions to you this evening for both the district's calendar, but then also EPIC's calendar round out the 24-25 school year.
So those revisions are presented to us, they've been communicated already to our families across the district. We're waiting to hear from legislature.
Yes.
Why approve it now?
To solidify it and allow people to have plans to formally act on it as a board, because it is an amendment. In the event that the legislature comes back around and provides that forgiveness, we'll be back at the table, unfortunately, rather than have to wait, because it could be the end of the session, it could be sooner. My sense is if they were going to forgive something, it would happen sooner. That would be my hope. So yes, admittedly, we may have to bring this item back as it relates to amending the calendar. I was able to speak today with North Kansas City School District, Park Hill School District, in addition to Platte County School District, the Career Centers, along with Northland CAPS. They're all in a similar situation, albeit the majority of them are ending on that Thursday because they have an additional day to gain as far as making up. Keep in mind, not every district starts with 173 days. Several were much lower than that. So in talking with our neighbors in North Kansas City, they're having to make up 5 days as compared to the days that we are, because their calendar wasn't built with as many student contact days.
So you're trying to make sure that we have staffing available for 2 days if we need to be in session.
Certainly, and messaging that out so people can plan accordingly. As we were looking at various options, when we just had the one day, that Tuesday after Memorial Day, we knew attendance would not be great. That's why we started looking at, this Friday, albeit it's parent-teacher conference week, along with that April 18th day on that Friday, knowing that if that was used as a makeup day, which certainly was an option when we just had the one, that makes for an incredibly long stretch for students and staff to come off of spring break, and then you have the entirety of April and May without any breaks in between. So a lot of factors to look at as we try to land what those makeup requirements are.
While I have immense confidence in the legislature to do things, I was being sarcastic. I think this is, the safest approach. My daughter would call me a buzzkill, but I mean, historically, we've made up snow days, right? It's not a new or novel concept, but I mean, this at least, through the use of AMI days, I mean, it's pretty minimal compared to what we've experienced and what some other school districts are experiencing.
And one thing we may end up going back to, again, would be years ago we used to include, and many districts did this, we used to include makeup day number 1, makeup day number 2, makeup day number 3, so that everyone knew ahead of time at the bottom of your calendar, here are the days that we're going to make up inclement weather days. Keep in mind, the focus shifted from makeup days to the number of hours. So what we've done is we've looked at both scenarios. In the event that we have to add those 2 makeup days at the end of the year, where do our schools fall in excess of the 1,044 required hours? They will exceed that. Even in the event that the legislature forgives those days, guess what? Our schools still exceed the minimum number of required hours. The one that gets the closest is Epic Elementary, because keep in mind, they have their regular school term and the hours they have to fulfill. When we talk about Epic having an extended school year, we actually leverage summer school in accounting for hours, both in August and June, which then is really what helps us cover off an extended school year at Epic. So we do end up getting down to the granular level at the buildings and making sure that they all meet those minimum required hours along with the days piece. And I appreciate Bob Citro for his giant spreadsheet that tracks all of that information. So.
I know you've explained this to me before, and maybe Steve has also, but it comes up quite often is why we don't have a late start option.
Your larger systems that have multiple routing tiers have a problem with that. So then as you start, in our instance, we have 5 tiers. And so as you start kind of thinking about when buses start rolling, as soon as they start that first tier and then they go to that second and third, that's the entirety of how much time it takes from the time they leave to the time they drop off those students, right? As you shift that 2 hours, you really have to think about the conditions, and you have to think of the circumstances in which you would make the decision to move to a 2-hour delay. And so, interestingly, we've looked at it. It's pretty problematic to do that 2-hour late start with 5 tiers. Districts like Shawnee Mission and Blue Valley, us, a few others have those 5 tiers. North Kansas City is in a similar boat. Interestingly, some of your smaller ones that have 4 or 3 tiers, they've tried it. When we think about those days, and we have these conversations just about every morning where we're canceling school, would today have been an appropriate day to do a 2-hour delay? In particular, when the inclement weather comes in late in the morning, right, around a 5:30 or a 5 o'clock or 4:30 decision to be made. In addition to that, when those wind chills are -20. And what we've found is that on those instances where we're having that conversation of might we have done a 2-hour delay today, our answer is no. You could press it, you could push the envelope, but that 2-hour delay in terms of wind chills, for example, when we had that situation a little earlier this year, those wind chills and temperatures were not any better, and you end up with the same result as far as having students out there waiting for vehicles and the potential that something could happen or a breakdown and so forth. And so we do continue to look at it and study it. it becomes pretty problematic for us because of some of those reasons. I don't know what you would want to add, Mr.
Yeah, I
Anderson.
think, we'll investigate it again to have it potentially as a tool in the toolbox. But we do always kind of break it down afterward. I can think of one instance, and it was probably about 5 or 6 years ago, when it was a late coming in, really heavy snow with kind of warmer weather on the way, and it just came down real heavy, real quick, and we canceled. But even that, it made sense 2 hours. It would have made sense. But making the call in the moment, you're just basing it on forecast, which, as you guys know around here, nobody's
Shot in the dark.
Yeah. So.
The other factor, too, to keep in mind, and we know this, but I'll say it, is that you're always drawing, your staff doesn't all live in the district, right? They live from all over the metro. So then you're also considering some of those factors. But again, we've committed to looking at it and seeing if that might be something that we would try to execute. It's just when we looked at the specific day and tried to put that decision on top of that day, the majority of the time it doesn't make sense to pull that. But yet you still have that option for those districts that do have it in the event that the stars align and those conditions allow you to do that 2-hour delay. So.
Do you have any idea of 5 tiers, how long that takes?
I mean, and then you throw ECC in the middle, so everything's just kind of tied together. So what would happen is ECC AM for sure gets canceled. It's the only way it works. And even in that, it's really tight because how each tier bumps into the next. So I think it's viable, but then you lose some of the other, any of the Career Center, Peak, all the, like a lot of those other things get kind of washed out of the system. So I think it can be done, but you lose some things along the way. And then still, even in that, there's no room for error, right?
Well, my question is on the back end. If you push it back, how many hours? So to get back out of there at appropriate time, how many hours have you actually put into school? I guess is my question.
Oh.
I'm not asking for a number. I'm just saying.
You would dismiss at the same time.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah. So you lose 2 hours.
Okay.
I will say some of the feedback that I've heard in other places, I mean, is it's still disruptive, right? I mean, you're still having families that have to coordinate around a 2-hour delay, which is, you get different feedback from different people in terms of how that's disrupted their day. So that's also, not only is it difficult to coordinate, but it's still resulting in some of the same disruptions.
And then you'd have kids on care coming in early, so then you get that, they're still coming in to receive some of those early families. Yeah, a lot of moving parts.
We have an action item.
We do.
What were we talking about?
I move the board adopt the 2024-2025 academic calendar and EPIC calendar as revised.
Second.
Nick?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
AJ?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Drew?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Angie?
Yes.
Motion carries.
The next item, 6.2, was a topic we discussed at our last study session. I appreciate everyone's participation with that. In and around the High School Transformation Network, supported by the Carnegie Foundation of Teaching for the advancement of teaching. So you have the Memorandum of Understanding that we received after our study session that's been completed with specific information regarding this partnership moving forward. And just to reiterate, from the slide deck we shared with you during our study session, really the aim of this and working to reimagine or re-envision high school, as far as traditional high school in the United States, is focused on a couple of key outgrowths or outputs to be able to broaden our learning goals beyond traditional academic measures. Certainly maintaining that academic rigor as we discussed at our study session, but then expanding really what we already have in place in our district as far as the skills and dispositions of our graduate profile. That's one piece. Incorporating rigorous and engaging learning experiences based on modern learning science. As far as what does the research tell us? There's certainly an evaluation piece associated with this network. And then lastly, meaningful signaling systems for tracking student progress. Think of a signaling system as far as those indicators that show how students are performing. So several years ago, we branched out beyond the alternative or the annual performance report, the APR, and looked at uncommon measures as far as the academic piece, the well-being piece, and then also the real-world learning piece. Efforts that we have underway with badging, that we have with micro-credentialing, that we have with portfolios, or that we have with extended transcripts. Those are indicators of what those signaling systems might look like that then encompass the real-world learning components as well as those skills and dispositions contained in the graduate profile. So we would present that to you this evening. It does come associated with a $100,000 grant to take care of some of the expenses, a lot of professional development expenses that are tied to being part of the network. In addition, we have a team that will be established to work closely with the network, myself, Dr. Moore, Dr. Van Batavia, in addition to our 2 high school principals. We will pull in others along the way, certainly the academy, their leadership, Christopher Hand working with accountability and assessment, Dr. Schmitz as it relates to the curriculum and instructional side. So we're excited to get going. There is another component to this as it relates to a data sharing agreement, which we have done in the past. We're super focused on that now, given some of the cybersecurity issues. So we want to make sure that that is solid once we receive the data sharing agreement. And we'll work closely with Tom Capps to be able to review that from a legal counsel standpoint in terms of his comfort level in bringing that forward for consideration. So we present that to you this evening for your consideration.
I move the board approve the memorandum of understanding with the Carnegie Foundation for the advancement of teaching.
Second. Discussion. The, just so the $100,000 grant, I totally understand. We've got some expenses that are going to come out. We're going to set those dollars aside and just obviously reconcile against that. Okay.
Yeah.
And then I know this is additional work on top of work that's already out there. Both principals, obviously yourself, Dr. Moore, others, Dr. Van Batavia. I assume you're all on board for that, ready to go.
Thank you for asking that. In terms of the lift or the load, and we talked a little bit about this, I feel, at our study session. We do trade off a couple things that we're involved with this year that were for a 1-year period. Most notably the Agile Network, which is through Lean Lab here locally in Kansas City, and then Education Reimagined, as far as some ecosystem work that Dr. Moore and I have been involved in. Interestingly, what we have seen, as you kind of peek behind the curtain with a lot of these networks and associations, they're all interconnected. And that Carnegie has been working with Education Reimagined, along with the Agile Network and a couple others. And so as we've grown our network, there are some common pieces there, whether it's individuals or organizations that provide professional development or network opportunities. I think Carnegie is leading the charge as it relates to, again, just rethinking that Carnegie unit, right? How do we do things differently? And a lot of those other groups are folding in underneath them. I think in part that's why we were able to apply, be invited to apply, let alone to be accepted, because of some of the work we've already done locally in our district, but then also regionally across Kansas City area, and then also through Success Ready Students Network.
Great.
So a lot of interconnectedness.
Yep.
I think it would be helpful to just kind of give a little bit more of an explanation of what the Carnegie unit is and why this is so why the idea that we're being invited to participate in something like this is such a big deal. Because I think you made it sound very calm and but it's a big deal, I think.
Sure. And it is humbling to think that the work we've done over the last several years across our schools, and it's really K-12, pre-K-12, that's positioned us to even be at the table for the opportunity. I'm going to go back and give credit to the board, past and present, as far as board members that have done several things, provided thoughts from industry outside of education, along with resources, along with just kind of challenging us to think differently around education. Our book studies, I mean, I can go on, and even name you all as an individual board, but then past board members who have really challenged and stretched our thinking. Historically, the Carnegie unit was that measure, typically around a 15-minute period in which instruction occurred. that then informed course offerings, credit attainment, transcripts for the sake of developing an informed, educated workforce. Interestingly, though, it's about 130 years old. Don't quote me on that, but it goes back to the early 1900s, in which things were done very differently. So that Carnegie unit of measure that then translated into higher ed, you know, you take a course for 3 credits, guess what? Those are 3 credits that are Carnegie units, right? That's the quick version. So then as we've evolved, the unit itself hasn't. And now we know we learn in many different ways. Whether it's personalized, competency-based, whether it's on a laptop, whether it's, you know, you take the assessment and you move beyond the course to the next opportunity rather than having to sit for a semester or an entire year long to obtain high school credit. That's the Carnegie unit. I'm surprised personally when we talk about it how many people don't know the Carnegie Foundation, because if you're in academia and education, pre-K-12 or higher ed, like everyone knows the Carnegie Foundation and the Carnegie unit. But we have found ourselves having to explain that a little bit because it may not be as common to other folks. So.
All right, thank you.
Do I need to say it again?
You call the motion?
No, there's a motion and second.
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
AJ?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Drew?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Angie?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Yeah, budget time.
6.3, we get to
Favorite time of
welcome
the year.
Ms. Sullivan back to the podium as we shared earlier. Just a quick overview. Years ago, the board would conduct a budget workshop in the month of June, and you would get a lot of information thrown at you in preparation for the June board meeting to approve the budget. And so when
And it was
Cindy,
on a Saturday morning,
okay.
Oh, that's terrible.
So then,
half day.
so then
Breakfast Club.
when Cindy and Steve and I showed up in our respective positions over a decade ago now, we decided we wanted to rethink this. And so rather than a workshop or a session on a weekend, as you'll recall, that we start off with our conversations on revenue projections in the month of March, followed by April, where we talk a little bit about expenditures. And then by the time we get into the month of May, we have a preliminary budget with some minor tweaks maybe. And then certainly that final approval in the month of June. And to steal Cindy's words, as soon as you approve that board in June, what happens? The next day it's wrong because it changes. And then that constant monitoring of our budget over the course of the year. So thank you to Cindy, and the Business Services Department, all the principals, directors, everyone that oversees a budget for the work that they've done in just continuing this process to where we are this evening. So, Ms. Sullivan?
Thank you for my introduction, Dr.
Sorry.
Tucker.
Slide 3.
Saturday morning.
We're done.
Yeah, the Saturday morning 4-hour ordeal makes this sound like a walk in the park.
Yes, but Steve did tell me I had 2 minutes, so we better get at it.
That was not meant to be shared.
Well, since we're talking about time, might as well. So I want to start this year by talking a little bit about 2 key revenue variables. And these 2 variables impact approximately 73% of our operating revenue. And there are aggregate assessed valuation and our K-12 student enrollment. So before we dive into the actual how things look, I just wanted to share those with you to begin with. And the next slide shows you our school district aggregate assessed valuation since 2015. And so it shows the year-over-year growth. The gray bars are reassessment years, and the teal bluish color are non-reassessment years. From 2015 to 2020, we see a fairly consistent pattern. But in 2021, we had COVID, an assessor who was leaving office, and the housing market went on a wild ride. So we saw a significant uptick in assessed valuation. Then non-reassessment growth in 2022 was also up due to new construction with the continuation of the housing market growth in that period of time. 2023, the State Tax Commission got involved, think Jackson County. Vehicles saw significant growth, and we saw a lesser but still sizable increase in assessed valuation. And then finally in 24, we seem to fall back into the more normal pattern look of what we would expect in a non-assessment year. That then brings us to the current year and trying to estimate what we think the growth will be. The county assessor is still finalizing their numbers, so we don't really have any information from them that's reliable to make that assessment. But since we fell back into a pattern in 24 that looked similar to the other years, my first initial response was to go with about a 7% increase in assessed valuation based on the patterns that we've seen before. And take into account also Senate Bill 190 and not knowing the effect of that, which I do think won't be significant. I just felt that 7% was the way to start out with this year. So that's the rationale on the numbers you will see on the local and county revenue for the assessment growth. So I wanted to share that with you.
This assessed valuation is inclusive of residential, commercial, all of that?
This is all of it, everything, yes. The next slide then talks about our second variable, which is student enrollment. Attendance and enrollment numbers are used to calculate the foundation formula, which represents about 32% of that preliminary operating budget. I forgot to mention that the aggregate assessed valuation is 41% of our operating budget. So this is the second significant piece of that. So we can look at this chart and know that our enrollment has been declining. And that was significant in FY 24 and 25. The demographer predictions are less significant in FY 26 with a predicted change of a minus 79 students. And we base our projections on the enrollment data provided by the assessor, or excuse me, the demographer. The numbers that are actual come from core data that is shared with DESE, and that's what they use when they do calculate the formula. So the formula is paid out on the first or second prior year or the current year, whichever creates the highest number for you. So this becomes a very important dynamic to look at as we use our production document to base decisions on what is sustainable in the future. So any salary increases or things that reoccur need to be worked in tandem with these numbers, because this revenue is going down because our enrollment is also decreasing. So it's very important to look at these and have good numbers, and that's why I appreciate the work our demographers do, and they have been pretty spot on for helping us develop these numbers. So
you said the 11,758 is the demographer projection?
That is correct.
That's still including the junior class, though.
Yes.
I'm curious what happens after that.
Right.
And then is there a difference between head count and FTE in terms of the full-time equivalency?
Of students?
In terms of what's reported in September?
So September is membership. So membership are students in seats on account date. Yeah. Okay? Enrollment is kids that are signed up to attend Liberty Public Schools. So weighted average daily attendance is a component of this enrollment number, and starting next year, weighted average membership will be a component. So it will take those two pieces. Don't laugh. It's a lot. Yeah. And you take those two pieces, it'll be 90% weighted average daily attendance and then 10% of the weighted membership. So that's a combination of the September count and the January count averaged. So 26 is 90-10, 27 is 80-20, and it goes forth until it's a 50-50 split. So not only are kids in seats now affecting our number, but also the actual enrollment membership numbers. So both components will be taken into consideration as we move forward. And we have a tool that allows us to estimate those based on the demographer data and our attendance ratios. that we plug in to carry out through the big operating projection, so that we feel very confident if our other information from the demographer is good, that we know what our revenue will be going forward several years. So it allows us some accuracy and planning abilities as we look forward.
So for several years, even following COVID, we were allowed to use a number that was from
2 years ago.
several years
Yes,
before,
several years ago,
right?
before COVID.
So was this current school year's 24-25 the first where we didn't do that?
Last
in
year it
several-
dropped off, I believe.
Yeah, last
No,
year was.
yeah,
Yeah.
last year.
So, I mean, in a way, we haven't had the luxury of stepping our way down, because COVID had us up here, and we took all those little steps we took in 1 year.
Mhm. Correct. So for this year, the FY25, we are actually using our FY23 numbers. The next year, we'll use FY24 numbers,
Right.
and so on and so forth. When we level out, it might be more to where we use current year numbers. It just depends on how it actually plays out, if there's a little bump or not.
And the big question there, we saw this when we looked at our demographic study, would be birth rates and how that plays out over the next several years.
Right, but from the COVID that was extended to this past year, I mean, we took, what, is that like a 6% drop in this category? I mean, this is a, like you said, it's a 30-something share of your overall, but within that share, we took a 600.
In
5%?
we lost
5%?
68 students in 23, 221 in 24, 315 in 25, and then projected 79 next year. Yeah. So when I get to that slide, you'll see that state revenue would have actually decreased, but for the 169 calendar day provision. We would have, for the first time in our district history for a long time, had a lower foundation formula revenue than we've had recently.
And not an uncommon
No.
situation
No.
across the state.
No.
No.
And we, if you'll
We do have a
recall,
few districts that are still growing.
Yeah.
yes,
but-
yes.
This is common.
This is common, and if you'll recall, when COVID began and that provision was put in place, we talked every year about the need to be ready for this, because this is one of those fiscal cliffs that is now happening.
Right.
And so you did not want to plan too far ahead to use revenue that you weren't going to have, and why it was so important to use ESSER dollars on one-time expenditures, which we did. So that was all part of that planning that we talked every year about.
I mean, through the demographer reports, I mean, there's some generational shifts in when people are starting families and how many kids they're having. And so, you know, when we talk about kindergarten classes replacing junior classes that are exiting, I mean, they're just, the numbers are different.
They are.
So,
And you also have to consider that it's happening not only to our district, but every other district. So that denominator that figures the state formula is also changing. So if it continues to change, our decline in revenue might not be as significant as it's projected to be right now. But that's one of those things you have to, that you can't necessarily predict. So, any other questions on that? Okay, so we'll move on now to talk specifically about each of the pieces of revenue. As we talked about the assessed valuation, we budgeted for a 7% increase. Right at this time, we're not planning on a change in the levy, and we're assuming a flat tax rate of 98%. The consumer price index in December of 24, which is what they cap the revenue growth on, was 2.9%. So our revenue growth on anything except new construction is limited to 2.9%. With these assumptions, that creates $3.45 million in additional operating revenue with a 7% increase in assessed valuation. So that's the majority, it's all of the growth you see in that graph there for the projected 25-26 piece of local and county revenue. We are expecting decreases in Proposition C sales tax. That's one of the things that House Bill 14 was approved to cover a shortfall. Sales tax has fallen off a bit statewide, so it's not generating as much revenue as it has in the past, so the calculator number that we use has been taken down for next year. Also, with the decline in interest rates just a little bit, we still will have a decrease in interest income. Also, with bond proceeds being spent down, we don't have as much money that is earning interest income in that fund. Food service sales will decline with a decline in enrollment, and other local sources will also either be flat or declining, and those include pilot payments, which are budgeted flat, M&M surtax, which is not candy, it's merchants and manufacturers. Tax is flat. State railroad and utilities, kids zone revenue, and children's services fund are also in there, and they've all been budgeted flat because most of those things we don't necessarily know what they'll be till further in the year, and we'll make a budget amendment when we find out what those really will be. So the total change in the preliminary budget for local and tax revenue is a net of right at $2 million increase. Okay? Questions on local and county revenue? Then we'll move on to state, which we spent quite a bit of time talking about that. But the calculated formula, like I said, resulted in a decrease of $334,000. You add the offset of the 169-day provision incentive of $600,000, it resulted in a small increase of $266,000 for state foundation formula. That's the state adequacy target remaining at $6,760. If the second half of the increase had gone into effect, the SAT would have been $7,145, and that would have generated $4.8 million of additional revenue. So if the governor does decide to put something in toward the formula, we could see a little bit of an increase. If it did increase to the 7145, we would see $4.8 million more. Other state revenue all remains flat. That's transportation funding, high need funding, and early childhood special education funding. And early childhood special education funding is a state mandated 100% funding, so until we know what we've spent this year, we won't know what our final reimbursement will be, so that's how that is dictated. And the same with high needs fund. That's an application that we will submit after in October when this year is over, so we will know that reimbursement.
So for other state, you said transportation, early childhood,
and high need fund.
Okay.
So federal revenue, title program allocations are, excuse me, decreasing simply because our census poverty rate is decreasing. And that's provided to us by the government. We don't have any hand in that. So that's done to us. Other things such as IDEA will be budgeted at flat, and all of the federal revenue sources include IDEA, title programs. There's a small piece of high needs fund that is federal. There's a small piece of early childhood special ed that is federal. Perkins grant is federal. School lunch and breakfast are federal, and Medicaid is federal. So those are all being budgeted flat, other than the title programs. And that preliminary budget is down by $510,000 due to title programs. We won't know those allocations until May. So again, some of this information comes in too late for our final document, but we will make budget amendments as we know those things further on in the year.
What's the input for the poverty calculation?
I don't have that,
Okay.
all of that. It's census data.
Okay.
So, but I don't know all of the particulars. So, how they gather it or,
Yeah.
so I can get that to share with you if you would like. I'll send it out.
Yeah, no, I mean, just be interesting.
Yeah, we can do that. Any other questions on federal revenue?
The other thing I'd just add, and that as we watch what's going on nationally in DC regarding the U.S. Department of Education, certainly staffing reductions within the department, all indications from what we're seeing is no disruption at this point as it relates to the federal funding piece. So we'll continue to watch that closely.
Yeah, I did have that
as
in
we
my
kind of
notes.
walk through the spring semester. Sorry, I jumped.
No,
in.
that's right.
But just wanted to underscore that.
I mean, there have been some discussions about question marks on certain programs going forward, including free and reduced lunch and some of those things. I mean, we're just going to have to
watch and see.
Yep.
Right, right. Okay. And then, so this wraps up the operating revenue conversation. So our total projected operating revenue is $198,064,509. Of that, local sources represent 60%, state are almost 37%, and federal are 3%. And again, a lot of the federal things we'll know more later on, so like we said, more to come on that. And finally, the total budget is basically flat. You see the total preliminary budget only increases by about $93,000, and that's due to a decrease in debt service and capital budgets due to lower interest income, and a decrease in capital due to no sales of devices and some income that we had this year that we don't expect to have next year. So, flat total revenue, a slight increase in operating of $1.8 million. So that's what we're looking at right now.
The operating revenue, Bob, that was a levy transfer, right?
In 2023, that was actually, well, 23 total revenue was bond, 24, yes, was the 50 cent move, correct.
Okay.
So you can see in 24, 25, and 26, we've stayed fairly flat all the way across. So that's what I've got for preliminary revenue budget. Again, in May, when we bring the preliminary budget document to you, we will have some updates, which you will see in that document that we will highlight for you at that time. But other than just the unknown things, revenue, it pretty much is what it is. So not a lot we can do. We don't make widgets, so we can't affect a lot of change there.
Maybe we should make widgets.
Any other questions for Ms. Sullivan this evening?
Just looking at it with that, like I said, kind of looks like holding steady. But for this school district, that's kind of unusual. I mean, you've been here a couple more years than what you show on the charts. I mean, has there ever been a stretch where it looked like that?
No.
Because it seems like...
Because we've been growing.
No. Up until COVID, we were growing.
Right.
And we were able to estimate revenue and plan for it to increase.
Right.
And then COVID happened, and we know what happened there, so now we're in a total 360 there. Where
So, I mean, it's... You could say it's comforting to see that we're holding steady. But given our multi-year history, decades, it is a little unnerving to see this going flat. And could this, anyway, it's just, I guess it's something that we haven't had to face as a school district for
a few years.
It's definitely something to watch on the expenditure side. going back with some history, we have had a couple of rounds of budget reductions in that whole conversation, notably in 2012, and then before that in the 06, 07, 08 Great Recession. So as you see that slow down or decline on the revenue side, then that gets you, and again into next month, where we talk about expenditures and how we make decision making. Sure, we got to watch staffing, we got to watch expenditures, all of which we're doing. So we'll share a little bit about that as far as our approach, particularly on staffing, because we know that's a bulk of our expenditures, and how we're looking at grade levels and all those different scenarios to make sure that we are kind of watching the signs, so to speak, in particular within enrollment and the revenue.
It certainly plays into the sustainability conversation. It also plays heavily into the Team Liberty conversation. As Dr. Tucker indicated, that piece of our expenditure budget is 80% salaries and benefits. So it's definitely something to talk about. Also recognize that in the past, if we had been looking at a decrease, if the foundation formula changed, it was typically funded. I don't know that this has happened before where the governor has not funded an increase. Now, we may have not been fully appropriated just due to revenue generation, but I don't ever recall to you that this has happened this way before. So that's definitely something to consider as well. Otherwise, we would have been looking at a much different picture if the state budget had funded the SAT 100%. So that's also something to consider.
Other comments or questions? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. And again, thanks to your team.
Thank you.
The next item, 6.4, is the health benefit broker, which really has been a team effort in getting us to where we are this evening. You'll recall back in January, we let out an RFP for health benefit broker services, worked closely with an outside consultant, Brian Johnston, out of Arizona. We had 5 proposals that were received that are provided for you in your packet. Would turn it over to Dr. Marriott to kind of walk us through that this evening.
So we received 5 proposals, and our team comprised of finance, so Cindy Sullivan served on that, as well as our HR team members, a select group of them, and then Brian Johnston, and then Jason Bright, through our purchasing department, really facilitated that discussion. He has developed a proposal review process that's very comprehensive and aligned with all of the proposal reviews that they do for other projects as well. So we reviewed the proposals individually, and then given that information, we brought all 5 teams in for individual interviews with our team and met with them, asked questions that we that developed from the review of the proposals that we wanted to dive a little bit more deeply into, and then really looking at the current relationship and interactions that we've had with our current provider, Holmes Murphy. And so based on that information, we really truly recommend to continue with Holmes Murphy. We've been pleased with the services they've provided. Jason Bright did add in a conversation back that they are in negotiations of amending their contract and removing one of the fee structures that they have implemented, and then securing a 3-year locked fixed rate for that fee structure. So that makes them very competitive with the other proposals when we looked at the fee structure. And so then that primarily shifted our recommendation to what those interviews projected and what was divulged in those. And again, we all felt individually and then as a group that Holmes Murphy was the best choice moving forward.
So no action this evening. You'll see as a board the finalized contract with Holmes Murphy at the April regular monthly meeting. Anything to add, Ms. Sullivan or Mr. Anderson? Appreciate Jason Bright for spearheading all of our RFP, RFQ processes, and that he does a phenomenal job, certainly working with our consultant in this particular instance.
Just real quick, I think there's so much work that occurs from proposal to agreement. That's where Jason does a lot of his work in conferring to negotiate out, the best contract we can get. So that's very common.
And I will add to that it's not a decision that's taken lightly to rehire an incumbent. There was a lot of good discussion about the merits of all of the people, and especially the top two, and why it made sense to go back with Holmes Murphy. So it was a good discussion.
Because this will take us to 20 years?
Yes.
So we don't feel like we're missing anything by sticking with Holmes Murphy, that there's a gap or a hole that just being with them for a long period of time opens up potentially. Everybody feels good about it.
I think that longevity is actually a factor that is positive for the district. They have a different perspective that the other four candidates that we interviewed weren't able to really dive into because they don't have the historical information that's available. So we felt after having those discussions that we are very comfortable in the direction that they're guiding us and have guided us in the past, and that they have really made conscientious decisions and given recommendations that are best for the district. So we will continue to have those ongoing conversations with them to make sure that they are bringing forward and making recommendations that are a benefit to the district.
Good.
Yeah.
Other comments or questions, discussion? Again, no action this evening. As soon as we have that proposed final document, then we'll certainly share that with the board. And again, for action when we get together back in later on in April. Okay? The next item then under new business is 6.5. That's the Liberty Middle School track and field remodel bids. I believe we had originally had this in consent agenda, pulled it out just to bring visibility to it and kind of talk us through it this evening. So we'll turn it over to Mr. Anderson to walk us through this.
I'll be brief, and yeah, in years past, we've taken all this work and put it under consent. This go-around, we've been pulling anything that's probably over $2 million for you all to kind of see in open session. So really just the main point here, I think you're all familiar with the project and the work that's included. The total amount of the bid package is about $4 million, which was right in line with what the estimates were coming from Newkirk Novak. So that's good. It was a little bit lower, which actually we appreciated. And really much of that work is making sure that what is underneath the grass and sod is really well designed and developed. And so I think we feel, so there's money that we're spending there that you're not going to really see, but we're really going to be able to benefit from. So feel really good about that project. Again, 6 lanes, all new grass field with proper drainage, irrigation, all new to give it a really good playing surface going forward. There'll be field goal posts, primarily, if not exclusively, a middle school facility with the opportunity for some lower level varsity sports as well.
Would entertain a motion.
I move the board approve the LMS track and field remodel bids.
Second.
Nick?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
AJ?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Drew?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Angie?
Yes.
Motion carries.
6.6, a few contracts and purchases to walk through. We'll turn that over to Mr. Anderson as well.
Two, just to expedite, to kind of meet some deadlines that were pressing upon us. One is with ACT Education Corporation with respect to work keys, which is like an assessment module for the ACT testing, get that in place. And then the second one is for a DJ for an event at DMS that they were pressed to get that in place prior to the show. And that's why it's here in front of you tonight. So we appreciate your approval of both of those.
So an emergency DJ?
Right now.
It's an emergency.
Move the board approve the emergency contracts and purchases as presented.
Second.
Nick?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
AJ?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Drew?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Angie?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Does he pull up in an ambulance?
Only for you, Rick. Legislation and advocacy. Do you have comments? Those of you who went to Jeff City?
I would just say that I think it is important for all of us to continue to engage. I mean, I think each of us has unique relationships with lawmakers, and it's important to continue to engage with them in Jeff City about the importance of public education, and certainly for any community members. And Dr. Tucker mentioned several organizations that are doing a lot of work to track legislation: MSBA, the Missouri Association of School Administrators, the teacher organizations. I would throw in there Missouri PTA, because they have also been engaged and involved, and I'm very pleased to see that, because PTA is certainly, while it is about supporting our teachers and building, it is also advocacy. And so I think parents, you can very easily do a Google of Missouri legislator lookup, and you can pull up a webpage where you can find your lawmakers and give them a call and tell the story of why Liberty Public Schools has been great for you. And so I certainly welcome anybody doing that.
I'd also add, before my voice goes away, that it's also a significant use of your time to actually read the legislation instead of just the news clips, because sometimes a lot is missed in the language and how it's reported. So I just think that's an important thing, and it's easy enough to access and follow along. You can click a button to follow along if something interests you.
I would say from the meetings last week, we obviously have some legislators, both in the Senate and the House, that understand the education and appreciate it and have a background that is real supportive. We also had the opportunity to talk to a legislator that on a different side of the aisle, but he seemed that there was a great need to be educated, and I thought he was listening. And that's hopeful. And of course, we encourage him to talk with some of the other legislators that we know support what we think is quality education and what's needed there in terms of finance. So it gave hope to listening, and I think also it gave an invitation to visit the school at some opportunities, other schools.
Anything else on legislation and advocacy?
The only thing I'd add is that, you know, in some of the discussions with organizations in terms of some of the changes at the federal level, and I know there are differences of opinions on the U.S. Department of Education and some of those things, but with some of those programs that are funded through that, I mean, I think it is also important to be talking to U.S. congressmen and people that are representing us in Washington as well, and maybe more so now than in the past.
Agreed.
Is there anyone I assume there's somebody at DESE who's liaison with U.S. Department of Ed to anticipate what's going to happen?
There are multiple people connected to various federal programs. So yes, you would hope they would get the heads up.
Yeah.
And then prepare for all of that. That may not always be the case. We learned some of that with COVID, as far as oftentimes DESE not being fully aware of things transpiring and trickling down. In July, actually, side note, in Washington, D.C., there's a big advocacy conference, and that brings people from all across the states, certainly from Missouri. A lot of superintendents will go and connect with area legislators, our representatives, and senators in Washington, D.C. That's probably our window of time in which we connect with them. I've traveled and attended that for the last several years, and also throughout the course of the year. So as we interact with DESE folks, I think we get updates as much as they know, but I question sometimes how much they may be aware, especially as things are just flying as it relates to federal agencies and a lot of activity in D.C. these days.
There is a list of dates currently there, beginning with April the 1st.
It's getting shorter for the year, just an observation.
It is, because it doesn't have the 400 other things listed there.
Yeah.
Well, you know, there's all those other little things that Denise and Dallas keep sending us calendars.
I love it. Keep sending them.
So, but they're fun. So.
Yeah. You may not be able to make all of them, but you pick, you know, you get to see some different things.
Exactly. Next study session is the 1st of April. And then...
That's no joke.
Sorry, that was
It's getting really late.
And then tax day. April Fool's and Tax Day, how about it?
15th, isn't it?
Yeah, this is regular
And
meeting.
the 15th is also picture day.
Taxes and pictures.
Taxes,
Do we have to be here
picture,
early?
board meeting. I believe that's called a trifecta.
Okay.
Move the board adjourned.
Second.
Nick,
Yes.
Jen? Yes. AJ?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Drew?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Angie?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Do not forget your things in the conference